So we talked about two different ways or two different techniques for giving your garden a rest. Both of them very effective. It just depends on what you have on hand and what you're wanting. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having an awesome day. It is Thursday, October 9th here in South Georgia. And on today's video, we're going to talk about some different ways to give your garden a rest. How to give it a break, but also help your soil out in the process. So I'm a big believer in giving your garden plots a rest every now and then. Back when we used to grow veggies to sell, I saw firsthand the consequences of trying to farm a plot too hard, trying to get too much out of it within a given year. You'll eventually kind of wear your soil out. So today I'm going to show you two different ways you can give your garden plot a rest this fall or winter, and in the process build some really nice soil, suppress weeds, and do some other things. So we've got 6 30 by 35 plots out here. We'll be doing the majority of our cool season gardening in these raised beds here. We will plant some cool season stuff in a couple of these in-ground plots, but this plot right here and that plot right there are going to get a rest. So we want to give those two plots a rest, but we just don't want to let them sit there with the bare soil exposed throughout the entire winter. Now from time to time we will just have bare soil on a plot for say 2 to 3 weeks as we're transitioning from one thing to the next, but we try not to have bare soil for a prolonged period of time. So I told you we were going to talk about two different techniques today. Let's get into the first technique, which is the compost and tarp technique. So we're in the middle of executing the compost and tarp technique on this plot right here. This is where we had some watermelons growing back during the summer, and I let my chickens out a little bit and let them kind of scavenge some of those watermelons that were left out here. And then a week or so ago, I took my mower and scalped down this plot. Now, as you can see in the center here, I ran out of compost, or this bed mix we use, which is sand, mushroom compost, and a little bit of pine bark. I ran out, so I got to get a little bit more to fill this center here, but you kind of get the idea of what we're doing. We're just putting piles of compost out here, and then we'll take a rake, smooth it all out. We're going for a nice, maybe 3-inch layer on top of this soil right here. And so we'll get a little more bed mix for that plot, and then get it all nice and leveled out and pretty with the rake. I'll probably soak it down with an overhead sprinkler, or maybe it just happens to rain right after we do that. Get some good soil moisture in place there, and then we'll add our tarp. And as long as we pull back that tarp every now and then, say once a month, and give it a good soaking before putting the tarp back on, we're going to build some really nice soil there. We just don't want it to dry out a lot, so we will add some moisture every now and then put the tarp back on. Like I said, that's going to suppress any weeds. We won't have to worry about fighting any weeds in that plot, because that black tarp is going to block any light. And from my experiences, it will also really build a nice little earthworm community in there as well. The plot on the far end over there where we had our tomatoes planted in the spring, we did the same thing to that plot last year, and there's worms all in that soil now. So as long as you keep it moist, definitely not going to have to worry about weeds, but you'll also build some nice soil biology as well. So this compost and tarp strategy is a really good low maintenance strategy if you know you're going to be really busy for a few months, not going to have a lot of time to devote to your garden. It's a good way to just kind of set it and forget it. But the feasibility of this strategy will kind of depend on what's available in your area or what you have on hand. So that bed mix that we use there, I think it's going to end up costing me about $150 worth of bed mix to cover that plot like I want to cover it. And I've already got a tarp on hand. I've got tarps I've been using for 6-7 years now, so that's not going to cost me anything. So if you can find good cheap bulk compost or something like that bed mix we use, this is a really good strategy, especially if you already have a tarp. And if you don't have a tarp, we're not talking about just your regular old blue camping tarp that you might get from a big box store. Those will break down in the sun pretty fast. You need a UV resistant tarp, something that's at least a 6 mil thicknesses. There are places online you can buy them. Sometimes billboard companies will have leftover, billboard tarps you can use. Several different options out there, but make sure it's UV resistant and at least a 6 mil thickness, and I like to use the black ones. And important to note here, if you've already got a really nice compost or mulch layer on top of your garden plot, you may not need to add any more. You may can just tarp it and be fine. Our native soil here is pretty sandy, so about every 2 or 3 years I need to add a nice layer of compost or that bed mix on top of it. So that tarp strategy is a really good low maintenance strategy, and if you don't already have a tarp, I'd recommend getting one. It's one of those things I think every gardener should have. Once you start using it, you'll realize just how useful and practical it is. Now this second strategy we're going to talk about is also pretty low maintenance, just not as much as the first one. Now in this plot, we're not going to use the compost and tarp strategy. We're going to use the cool season cover crop strategy. So this plot is where we had a nice crop of Seminole pumpkins growing. We harvested, I think, over 100 pumpkins out of this plot right here. We got those vines raked out, and I went over this with a wheel hoe one time yesterday, just to kind of fluff up that soil a little bit for our seeding today. So let's talk about this cover crop strategy and some of the cover crops we'll be using to execute this strategy. So as far as cover crops go, there are warm season cover crops and there are cool season cover crops. We don't want to plant a warm season cover crop right now because it's not going to have much time to grow before a frost kills it. We want to plant things that can tolerate freezing temperatures. So the fall is when we want to plant cool season cover crops, but we have to be careful. We can't get in too big of a hurry. If we try to plant these too soon when it's still kind of warm or hot outside, they won't germinate very well, especially stuff like this clover right here. So that's why we have to wait until October. That's ideal time for us down here to be planting cool season cover crops. That's when you can get some really good germination. You still got enough good weather to get this stuff up and growing good before it experiences a frost, but the soil's not too hot to inhibit germination. That's what makes October the perfect time for us down here. And so we're going to make a little cocktail today. I've got 4 different things that we're going to add together for this plot behind me here, and we'll go through those things in a minute. But briefly, let's just generally talk about some of the benefits of cover crops. So cover crops are going to reduce erosion. Now I don't have to worry about erosion a whole lot down here because my land is pretty flat, but if you live in a hilly area, definitely something to worry about. Cover crops also help suppress weeds, so if you plant them thick enough, once you get that nice cover crop vegetative canopy there, you're not going to have to worry about any weed seeds on the soil germinating and thriving up through that canopy there. It's going to cover your entire soil, keep you from adding any more weed seeds to your weed seed bank, and hopefully reduce your weed seed bank over the long term. Cover crops add organic matter to your soil, so all this vegetation that we grow out here, depending on how you terminate it or incorporate it back into your soil, is going to add some nice organic matter there. Also, the root exudates from these cover crops really help feed the microbial communities in your soil. Last year we did an entire video on that subject. Lots of good benefits there as well. And then some cover crop species like this hairy vetch right here are going to fix nitrogen. So they're going to grab nitrogen from the atmosphere and add it to your soil, which is an added benefit for whatever vegetable crop you're planting next. And then lastly, an extra benefit for me specifically, it's going to provide cheap chicken food. So once this cool season cover crop gets up, say a foot tall, 18 inches tall or so, we'll put our chicken tractor on here and let them graze it. Let them graze it and then grow back, let them graze it again. And we really don't have to feed our chickens any chicken food during that process. They're just eating this stuff right here. So let's talk about the components of the mix that we're going to put together today. First off, we've got these Austrian winter peas right here. This is a nitrogen fixer, kind of vines and climbs all over the other cover crop vegetation. Always good to have some winter peas in the mix. Then we've got the hairy vetch, which I mentioned earlier. This is another nitrogen fixer. It's going to vine much like those winter peas will, kind of climb all over that vegetation, make a nice dense vegetative canopy. Then we've got our clover here. I like to grow a variety called Berseem Clover. The clover is going to give you some nice, really dense ground cover, and it also grows back really well after being grazed. So the chickens can wear it out pretty good. As soon as I move the chicken tractor off a particular spot, it will usually come back pretty quickly. And then lastly, we have our rapeseed, aka canola. And before I tell you why we add this to the mix, let me give some time for those 5 or 6 people that I know are going to do it to go ahead, put in the comments below, tell us how bad canola is. Okay, hopefully they got their comment in time there. So the rapeseed, aka canola here, this is non-GMO, you know, this is just rapeseed. Our chickens really love this stuff, so I like adding it to the mix there. Gives me a lot of good biomass, and the chickens love to eat this stuff. It's probably their favorite thing in this mix, so I always add it to the mix. A lot of organic potato farmers use rapeseed because there are a lot of benefits of incorporating it into the soil. It's like a natural biofumigant for the soil. So before you knock it, this is some really good stuff for your soil. Now, I'm not going to show the process of sowing or planting this stuff on today's video because honestly it's pretty boring, and we've shown it on past videos. Really simple. We're just slinging this seed out there as evenly as we can with our hand, and then we take our landscape rake here and just lightly comb over the soil there, just walking up and down until we've raked the entire plot. But I will give you a few tips that I've learned from experience. So one, let's talk about planting density, or just how much cover crop seed you need. So in the past, I've been pretty guilty of using too much cover crop seed. I do like to plant it thick because it tolerates grazing a lot better, grows back a lot better. We don't have a lot of bare patches after it's just grazed one time. So I do like to err on the side of planting it thicker. But you can mess around and plant it too thick. Now, one thing that's important to consider here is seed size. So the seed size on these peas right here, these peas are a lot larger than those tiny clover seeds right there. So we wouldn't need near as much clover seed as we would pea seed if we were just going to plant one thing over this entire plot here. So if I was just planting winter peas on this plot here, I would probably need about 5 pounds. This is 1 pound right here. Now, this 1 pound is going to be fine today because it's mixed with all this other stuff. And most places online where you can buy cover crop seeds, I'm pretty sure Green Cover Seed has it, will have suggested seeding rates for each variety or each component there. Look at that seeding rate and maybe go just a little higher than they recommend. You should be good with that. So today I've got 1 pound of each, those 4 components we talked about earlier, and that's what we're going to use here. Not sure if we'll use all of it, but I think this is going to be plenty. And so what I'll do is I'll just mix it in this bowl right here, and then we'll go throw it on this plot. But I'm not going to mix all 4 together because I've learned my lesson about this in the past. Like I showed you earlier, the clover seed and the rape seed a lot smaller than the pea seed. If we mix the real small seeds and the big seeds together and we just throw it that way, we don't get things real even. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 passes. I'm going to mix my clover and my rape seed together in the bowl. The smaller seeds, I'm going to go throw those, and then I'm going to mix my peas and the vetch, the larger seeds, together in the bowl, and then go throw those. That should give us a nice even distribution of all 4 things here. If you mix them all together, what ends up happening, you end up throwing way too many of these smaller seeds here because you're grabbing a handful trying to get those bigger seeds, and you've got way too many of those smaller seeds. So I'm going to do 2 separate mixes, but they'll all end up growing together in this plot. So we'll throw those seeds out there. We'll water them in good for the next 3 or 4 days. We'll run the overhead sprinkler for about an hour every day. Soak it in good, get some really good germination. Once those seeds germinate, shouldn't take but maybe, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks for all that stuff to get maybe a foot to 18 inches tall, and then we can pull our chicken tractor on it and start grazing it. Once it comes up and looks really nice, and before we start grazing it, I'll be sure to show you all that. So we talked about 2 different ways or 2 different techniques for giving your garden a rest. Both of them very effective. It just depends on what you have on hand and what you're wanting to do. The compost and tarp method, Doesn't take much effort at all. Just spread the compost, put the tarp on it, and let it ride. Pull it back, give it some water every now and then. The cover crop method really doesn't take a whole lot of effort either once you get the cover crop up and going, but when you get ready to terminate it, you either need to have some type of equipment to terminate it, or chicken tractor like we've got. You've got to figure out some way to stop it from growing so you can plant the next vegetable. And I should mention, you can plant the same cover crop mix we have here in a raised bed. We've done it on past videos in one of our taller raised beds there, and then we just go and chop it down, take a pitchfork, turn it into the soil. So no matter the size of your garden, you can use either of these techniques. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Let me know in the comments below if you like to give your garden a rest, and what you do, what techniques you use to give your garden a rest and kind of rebuild that soil. And if you want to see this cover crop mix that we're planting today on a much smaller scale, like I said, we did it before in a raised bed. You can see that on this video right here. We'll show you how to terminate it once it gets nice and lush, how to fold it into the soil to get it ready for planting something else. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.